Hello, Dr. Summer Smith. My name is Catherine Graves, and here is the sign, Catherine Graves. Today is May 31st, 2019. Um, Today I'm going to be giving a presentation on the gastric phase of digestion. So let's get started. So I'm going to start by giving a little introduction of the gastric phase of digestion. So before food is even put into the mouth and enter the body for the digestion phase, the vagal nerve, the vagal reflex begins the digestive activity. Based on the parasympathetic nervous system, we smell food, we see food, and our nervous system and the vagal reflex stimulates our body to get prepared for the digestion of food. And once food actually enters the mouth and the stomach, stimuli in the gastric lumen initiates a series of reflexes. These reflexes can be short and long, and this is known as the gastric phase of digestion. Um, the contractions, the reflexes, have the presence of peptides or amino acids in the lumen, which activate endocrine cells and enteric neurons. Also, there's hormones that are stimulated, neurotransmitters, and paracrine secretions, which influence motility and secretions in the digestive system. So on the right-hand side of this PowerPoint, I included a diagram from the textbook, which shows the cephalic and gastric phase reflexes. It shows the food entering the mouth, and which also stimulates, like I said before, the parasympathetic nervous system in the brain. This is stimulated by the vagus nerve, which kind of initiates the whole process, and I'm going to explain the process further in these next coming slides. So I'd like to give a brief background about the stomach. The stomach, when food arrives in the mouth and travels down the esophagus, the stomach this purpose is to store food, and it relaxes to hold the increased amount of food volume, and this is known as receptive relaxation. The upper half of the stomach stores the food, while the lower half of the stomach begins to break down and begins the process of digestion. There's peristaltic waves that are stimulated to push down the food toward the pylorus, which mixes the food and the digestive enzymes together until a uniform consistency is created, because we can't have chunks of food traveling down the digestive system. We need to have a consistent, uniform mixture in order for the digestion to continue. Another role of the stomach is to break down the proteins of the food and the fat digestion. The stomach is also known to produce enzymes and acids that protect the body from pathogens. So sometimes we eat pathogens that could be harmful to our body, and our stomach is one of the defense mechanisms that the body has in protecting ourselves from these pathogens. Also, we have protective layers in the stomach that protects our stomach from being damaged by our own secretions, because the stomach is very acidic and it has a lot of acid in it that could be harmful to our body. So the gastric function is integrated with the cephalic phase of digestion. This prepares the stomach for the arrival of food, and it initiates these gastric secretions of gastrin and histamine, which produces hydrochloric acid, or HCl. So a continuation is, like I said before, once the food enters the stomach, the gastric lumen initiates a series of short reflexes. This is neurally mediated, and like I said before, it's called receptive relaxation. Gastric motility during a meal is regulated under neural control and is stimulated by digestion of the stomach. and the stomach regulates the rate at which food enters the small intestine. And once the stomach is mixed and mixes all these food, it's called chyme. And large food cores are digested to form uniform texture of chyme, and it's slowly distributed through the pylorus into the duodenum. The stomach contains gastric glands within mucosal layer which produce G cells, produce gastrin, which is released into the blood to promote acid release. So moving on here to acid secretion. So we have parietal cells in the stomach, and these parietal cells secrete gastric acid, otherwise known as HCl or hydrochloric acid. 1 to 3 liters are produced a day of this gastric acid, and a high amount of this gastric acid makes the stomach and makes the chyme and the stomach fluids very acidic, and it can even create a pH down to 1. So the roles of gastric acid are to release pepsin to break down proteins, trigger somatostatin released from D cells, and it can kill bacteria. So the way that this acid is secreted is because proton ions from water inside the parietal cells are pumped into the lumen using hydrogen potassium ATPase pumps, and then the chloride anions follows the electric chemical gradient created by the hydrogen protons, and then you have a result of the hydrochloric acid secretions. So moving on to the next slide. So I want to talk about enzyme and paracrine secretion. So the stomach produces 2 very important types of enzymes. These enzymes are known as pepsin and gastric lipase. Pepsin is secreted by cells known as chief cells, and these chief cells carry out the initial digestion of proteins, and one of the major roles of pepsin is to digest meat, specifically because meat requires pepsin to digest. And we also have the enzyme known as gastric lipase. Gastric lipase is co-secreted with pepsin, and they break down fats, otherwise known as triglycerides. But just something to note that's important: only 1/3 of the fats that are broken down in the body are broken down in the stomach by this gastric lipase. So moving on to paracrine secretion. So paracrine secretion secretes 3 very important paracrines known as histamines, somatostatin, and intrinsic factors. Histamine is secreted by enterocrafin-like cells, ECLs, and it is a response to gastrin or acetylcholine. And this ECL is known to stimulate acid secretion. We also have intrinsic factors, and intrinsic factors are a protein that is used for vitamin absorption, which is also very important for the gastric phase of digestion. And we also have somatostatin, which is a growth hormone secreted by the D cells. And this somatostatin is primarily used for the negative feedback to signal for gastric phase of secretion. So moving on to the stomach balances digestion and defense. So the gastric mucosa protects itself, autodigestion by acid and enzymes. So we have mucus cells on the luminar surface, and the neck of gastric glands secrete both substances. And mucus forms chemical buffering barrier underlying the mucus. And so, like I said before, the stomach acid is very acidic and can be very harmful to our bodies, but actually a lot of the times that we have negative responses to these acids are not due to excess production of stomach acids, but more so from alcohol consumption, coffee consumption, and the sometimes ingestion of aspirin can be very harmful. But that was my PowerPoint on the gastric phase, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it was very informative to you, and thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day.